Hey, I have a fun new project today. My last trip to the thrift shop, I bought this set of coasters. It came in a nice little wooden box, 4 coasters, all ready to go, and it was a whole $2. So all I thought I needed to do was put some paper, decoupage it, and paint the little box, and I thought it would come out real cute. I'm using Decoupage Queen rice paper called Monarch Butterfly and Sunflower with the green background. The first step was to put a coat of Slick Stick, which is really just a primer. And I did this because you want the paint and the paper to have something to grip onto. The top of coasters are a little bit slick, a little bit shiny. So to take that off, I applied the Slick Stick. You can use the primer of your choice. You don't have to use this product. And I just did one coat and let it dry a few hours. The next step was to paint the box, and I went with a color from Dixie Belle called Palmetto, which pretty much matched the color of the paper. But after I was finished, I wasn't wild about it, so I came back and did 2 coats of kudzu over top of that. Next, I did a coat of Waverly Cashew on each coaster. This was just to even out the color. The primer left it sort of streaky, so I just did one even coat on each coaster. Then it was ready for my decoupage. Let that dry overnight, and while I was waiting for it to dry, I did the coat of kudzu on the box. This was a nice contrast to the paper rather than it matching. Again, the paper that I used is from Decoupage Queen, and you just have to figure out how you want your design to look. So just play around with the tiles, line them up with the pictures, and since the design I wanted on the coasters was a little tight with some of the other pictures on there, I did it a little differently. Instead of just cutting the paper in 4, I put my coat of Collage Page on the coaster and put the whole piece of paper on top. So just line up your design and press it down really well. You want to get all the bubbles out. You want to make sure there's no air under there. You can, I just use my fingers, but you can use a piece of rolled up plastic wrap. You don't want to rip your paper. It's pretty strong, the rice paper, but you can use a piece of rolled up plastic wrap or a very lightly wet towel and just push down on it. But I felt using my fingers with this project was fine. My next tile, same thing. Just put a coat of the Collage Page or whatever medium you like. Figure out where you want the design on the paper. So I'm doing each corner here. Put another coat of your medium on top, and always make sure to press down really well so it's adhered. Then you're going to let it sit overnight or till it's dry, a few hours, and then you can cut and sand the edges. Again, since my designs that I wanted were kind of close, I started to cut and then realized I just wanted to use my sandpaper to do a nice clean cut right up close I didn't want to waste any of the paper. The important thing to remember when using the sandpaper and decoupage is to only go in one direction. Don't go up and down, don't go side to side. It's awfully tempting, but I've made the mistake of doing that and ruined the paper. So take your time, just go down. I used a sanding block and wrapped it in sandpaper. I believed I used 120 grit, but you can use 220, 150, anything like that. Just take your time. Make sure all your edges are clean. And when you do it this way, you'll notice the paper is really nicely adhered to the tile. I've done this with other paper and cut the paper to fit the square rather than this method. And sometimes you get the edges with air bubbles in there. It just doesn't stick on all the corners. This is the best method I've found, is the gluing and then the sanding off the edges. It takes a little longer, but it works out well. Now it's time to do the last two squares. Take your time, figure out where you want your design to be. I love the little butterflies. I wanted to include them. So I decided to use this portion up here. And I also like the top left corner. I really like the script up there. I decided that every square didn't really have to have a sunflower on it, but it's up to you, whatever you like. I cut the paper this time because there was plenty of room for the paper to come over all the sides. Make sure you have it lined up right. This is the perfect size paper for this kind of project. It's the smaller sized rice paper. It's about 8.5 by 11. Again, just put a coat of your medium. Put your picture, press it down really well, and then another coat on top. The next tile, put a coat of the medium, and then the picture. Press it down really well. Get those corners and the edges. If you do have a little bit of bubbling, you can always go back and use a really small brush and add some more of the Mod Podge, Collage Podge. I added another coat of the medium on top of the two coasters that had already dried. Now they each have two coats. And then later we will seal with another product. Here I just evened out the lines a little bit. They really do just disappear, but I just wanted to make sure it looked nice and clean. I let that dry overnight, and then I came back and sanded off the edges. I can't say this enough. Make sure you only go one direction. Just keep going down. The edges will come off. Take your time. I put another coat of the glue on top and then let that dry. Then I came back with gator hide. This is a Dixie Belle product, and it's a sealer that is really good for repelling water. Dries very clear. Make sure to stir it really well and do a nice thin coat. Thin coats are always better than thick. It's better to do 2 or 3 thin coats than 1 or 2 thick coats. Make sure you get your edges really well. You don't want anything to peel. You don't want to get your edges really well. You don't want it to peel up. Then I sealed the box with 2 coats of the gator hide as well. Do all sides, and I even painted the bottom. So I sealed the bottom as well. Let that dry. And my last step was to add a little gold wax to the edges of all the coasters. And I used a product. The color is called Eternal, and it's from Redesign with Prima. And it wax. I usually just use my fingers. You can use a brush, but I always feel like I have more control with my fingers. Get the edges, all 4 edges. And lastly, I put all of the coasters in the box and tied it with ribbon. Such a nice presentation with these, it came in a box. So I tied it to make it pretty. And that's it. Easy project. Make sure you just let all the coats dry in between when you're applying all your glue and the sealers. Again, let me know if you have any questions. As always, you can leave comments here. Make sure to like and subscribe. I have more videos on the way, so check back often. And thanks for watching. If you do make a set of coasters, I'd love to see them